Hello, hello, and welcome everybody to Let's Talk Relationship here today. My name's Stefania Pulio from the Gentleman Square, and if you're just joining us now or haven't watched any of our segments, welcome. And today we have an amazing guest. We are talking about some really impactful topics here in regards to relationships, mental illness, and addictions. And we are going to be speaking to an amazing person named Nikki Patrick-Swartz. Now, Nikki is an amazing lady who has definitely experienced a lot to do with mental illness and trauma and addictions. But as you know, many relationships have their ups and downs. And usually if, one party in the relationship or both parties are involved in experiencing addiction or mental illness, it can bring a lot of challenges. And today, Nikki's going to actually share her story where she has found healing. But first of all, let me tell you, Nikki is so amazing. She is a certified hypnotherapist. She's a Reiki master healer. She's also does sound healing. So she's a practitioner in sound healing. And she is all the way from Easton, Maryland. And I'm so proud to have her on the show because she's going to be sharing her story. And I'm not going to talk about her anymore. She's going to come on now and introducing Nikki Patrick-Swartz.
Oh.
Hi.
Hi, Stefania.
Hi, Nikki. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. It is such a blessing to be here tonight with you. And I really appreciate this opportunity to share this space with you tonight.
I appreciate you coming on my show to actually share and talk about your amazing journey. And I've known you for a while now, and we've just become great friends. If not, we call each other sisters, don't we?
Yes.
Spiritual sisters. And yeah, definitely. So tonight, everybody, we are talking about addiction, mental illness, and relationships. And if you just joined in, please hashtag live or hashtag replay if you're watching this. But first of all, Nikki, tell us a little bit about your journey and, how it all started. And, now you're a completely changed person. But let's talk about your beginning part of your life and your challenges.
Absolutely. Well, that's actually the fun part of the story. No, in today's terms of, reality TV, I think that I could have a pretty good reality TV show. It's been quite the journey, I have to say. I want to just start this off by saying that, no matter where you are in your life or what you've done in the past, you can always decide to change. And in the very simplest terms that I can put it's just a decision to say, you know what, I've had enough of things being like this. There's got to be a better way. And I think that's a big, huge part of my story is waking up to the mess that I had become. You know what I mean? And denial is so powerful in the mind, and many things can get done just because a person is in denial or not get done, and by that I mean, like, I was in denial to my behaviors. I was in denial to my I was manipulative. I did all these things, and I got to tell you, it was all learned behavior. So in my childhood, I was the firstborn daughter of my mother and my father. She was 18. He was like, I don't know, 21 or something like that. But they were very young. And my mom learning about what happened to me, remembering what happened to me, a lot of it I remember. There's a huge history there of trauma. And when you have a child who is put into a very dysfunctional situation, born into it, that's all they know. And so everything that I did in my adult life was a reflection of what was modeled to me as a child. And this is what happens with everybody. We are all a product of our conditioning. What we saw, what was modeled to us by our parents, by our loved ones, by the people who were influential in our lives. And so my mother was abused. My mother's parents were abused. It was something that was passed down. So as I tell this story of my life, I have to say that I'm in a place right now where I have forgiven those people. And I'm free of that, and I can speak about this with no emotional charge. And when we talk about healing from our trauma, I feel like that's what the definition is. It's because I can never change what happened to me in the past, but I can change how I look at it. I have that power. And I got to a point where I decided I wanted to take my power back and stop living in that story. So I want to say that before I tell the story, that there's been a lot of transformation getting through this. And so my mother was not a very stable person. It's believed that she was sexually abused by her father and knowingly passed around to his friends. That is just a rumor between very close family members. So she never spoke of it, but there was a weird relationship between her and my grandfather. My mother was very narcissistic and angry. She had never processed any of her trauma. She was very manipulative, secretive, paranoid, and she was very violent and rageful and angry. And this was only seen by the people inside the house. She was what you would call a covert narcissist. They keep it very, very undercover. And so she and my father fought constantly. It was a battleground. He broke her jaw. She did this and that. She stole from him. There was just so much conflict, and I believe alcohol was involved. It was the 70s. People were partying. My mom smoked a lot of pot. She was 18 years old. She wanted to do what 18-year-olds do, but she also had this toxic life on the farm. And she needed to escape from that. And that was what my father was. And, they had planned me and everything, but she didn't have the skill set to raise a child. So very early, very young, I started to, she hit me a lot. I got a lot of spankings, a lot. And then it turned to beatings. It turned to, I have a little brother, and it was a constant everyday yelling, screaming, hitting, yelling, screaming, getting beatings, getting smacked across the face and backhanded and things like that. It was as I had to learn how to gauge a room, to be able to go into the room and know what mood is she in right now. Am I going to get a nice mommy, or am I going to get an angry mother? It was so bad that I really did believe at a very young age that my mother did not love me. How could you do that to your child is kind of where I was, even at 4 and 5 years old, and
so this is what you had already programmed in your mind, that your mother didn't love you, correct? At 4 years of age, as early as that,
yes.
Because you were witnessing all this, and you were obviously not only witnessing, but you were living it.
Yes, I was living it. There was no safe place, right? We would get to go to my grandparents, and it was much more fun there, and they were more laid back, as little kids, it was it was fun to be there. But my mom, you know, she was being an 18-year-old and fresh out of high school. And anyway, so they moved a lot. We moved, I went to a different school every year. Like we moved, I think over 40 times by the time I was 16 years old. My mom's relationship with my father ended when I was 5 and my brother was 3. And she went on to go into relationship after relationship after relationship after relationship, one man to the next man to the next.
And you were still with your mother during this time, right?
Yeah.
You were actually with your mother. Okay.
Yes. And so what's being modeled to me is that, you know, the man, she always had, her men were always more important. They were always put first. What, you know, she's very codependent. So I was modeled codependent behavior. She yelled and screamed every day, all day. And that was the behavior I was modeled. So like, these are the things I didn't know any better. As I'm getting older, as I'm growing up, as I'm learning to navigate in the world, I had a very hard time having relationships. Now, because I went to a different school every year, I was also, and we were very poor. So I was also like this outcast, and I was bullied and made fun of and teased a lot. And I remember being spit on the playground, and I missed so much school because it was just so traumatic. I couldn't concentrate on anything. I'd always doodle and draw. Drawing was my escape. I learned how to draw, and I just poured myself into that as a way to escape in my mind from all of the dysfunction and the abuse that was happening. And so the second husband only lasted 6 months because he was a big time coke dealer. I mean, it just wasn't going to work out. She was singing in a band. She had 2 toddlers. We would sit on the front row while she sang up on the stage because she didn't have a babysitter. So we toured around locally with my mom as she sang in the band in the 70s. You know, we slept in the back of the we slept in the back of the what do you call those, station wagons? Yes. You know? Yeah. It was very much like free. I don't know. She was a hippie, man. Like,
well, you had a very interesting start. You had a very interesting start, obviously.
Yeah.
So how did that now, as you grew up now, like, let's move on to your story, because your story is what's really impactful here, right? So what happened, where did you start at an early age? Because I know you kind of moved out of home early, and that's when all your
yeah. So this kind of dysfunction with my mom went on for a while, and there was more abuse. There was more stuff leading up to this. But how it affected me, you know, I think every day I stuffed something down. I stuffed some raw emotion down. I remember being angry, crying in my bed, sobbing, thinking, I hate her. How can she not love me? How could she treat me like this? I felt so rejected and so like lonely and abandoned. And I was made to be responsible at a very young age too. Like, you know, children from the age of 0 to 7 don't even have the cognitive capability to have reasoning or logic or decision or willpower. They just don't even have that brain function yet. It's not fully developed until we're 8 years old. So especially in those younger years, you know, it's all literal to a child. So to me, it was complete rejection. To me, it was I was unworthy. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't. She was very critical. You know what I mean? Every little thing had to be done perfect. The house had to be super clean. So this created, the person that it created in me as this neurotic, controlling, manipulative, codependent teenager who sought her attention. I had to get some sort of validation because I felt so just worthless. So I started getting it from guys. Watching her go from relationship to relationship. I began to do the same, and I began to use sex as a way to find love and belonging and to feel that connection, We moved around a lot. I didn't have it with my father. He wasn't a very affectionate dad. He did stuff with us. He got us every weekend like he was supposed to, but my mom drove a wedge between that relationship too. So there was literally no safe place for me. And this is, when you think about kids who are, I just think about my parents and the dysfunction that I got to witness, and the abuse that I experienced. There's kids out there right now that are going through this because their parents thought what my parents thought, and like, oh, kids are resilient, they'll be okay, and I wasn't fucking okay. Like, I was messed up.
Yeah.
I started to escape through drugs at about 14. I started, and I'm going to tell you now, the drugs, nothing was a gateway drug. The trauma was my gateway drug. The trauma was was the problem, the long-term childhood abuse was my problem. And so I started doing the drugs. I started smoking pot. I tried coke. I tried meth. I did a lot of LSD. I mean, every time there was a Dead concert, the Grateful Dead came around, there was always good drugs. So I spent a lot of time, at 14 years old. By this time, she's on her 4th husband, doing drugs and partying. And I worked. I had to work because she needed help paying the bills. And so at 13, I got my first job washing dishes in a restaurant. I wasn't even old enough to work legally. And I started washing dishes, and I had to give her my paychecks. So here I am at 14 years old doing grown adult things. I mean, and the list is long. We probably would need more time for me to go through everything that led up to the decisions I made. But I started to numb. I started to numb with the drugs and really numb out. And then really, like, I just did not care about myself. I had no self-worth, no self-esteem. I was the girl that slept around. I didn't mind being the side chick. You know what I mean? I didn't care. I just wanted to party and have fun and not feel any of that rejection. Like, I felt like finally I was free enough to make some decisions. But that quickly changed. I was only 14. So, I ended up getting in trouble. I ended up going to my first, they sent me to a counselor, and they put me on depression medicine.
At 14?
And
at 14?
14, yep.
Wow.
Yes. And at 14, the depression medicine made me feel even worse, and I tried to take them to kill myself. So at 14, was the first time I tried to commit suicide, and I ended up in this mental institution for 2 weeks. That was local here, and then I got out of there, and they put me on psych meds, different ones, because that didn't work, and they labeled me. I don't know what they labeled me then at 14. I don't know what my diagnosis was, but I do know that it was about 9 months later before I was in rehab, and I had turned 15. So at 14 was my first mental institution, and at 15 was my first rehab. And so after that, I got pregnant. There's so much that I'm skipping here. So 15, I get out of rehab. At 16, my brother and I leave my mom, and we move in with my grandparents. We were in Tennessee, and we moved back here to Maryland. And I was 16, and I was tired of her stuff. Things had gotten very, very bad and very toxic, and she had put her hands on me. She beat me up until I was 16 years old. She put her hands on me. And at that point, I lost it, and I snapped, and I went off on her, and I beat her back for the first time ever in life. And this point was the point where my brother, it was like, we're done, we're leaving, you can, her 4th husband was a crackhead and an alcoholic, and he kept stealing our money, our bill money, and smoking crack with it. And he got in this horrible accident and totaled our car and had to be life flighted to the hospital only to get out and use again, you know. And so she kept choosing him over us. So we left and we went to live with my grandparents. And so things got better. I was doing good in school. I was getting good grades. I was, you know, structured. I ended up getting a car. I had a couple jobs. I got a boyfriend. We started having sex and I got pregnant at 17. And then I put that baby up for adoption. My grandparents wanted to send me away to a home for girls who get put their babies up for adoption and never see them again. And so I did not want that. And the reason why I chose adoption is because a friend of the family said she had done the same thing. And so I was like, well, I was afraid to be a mom. I knew that I could not be a mother and not mess that child up. I knew I didn't have the skill set. So I had to do something. And I just couldn't do the abortion. So I chose to have an adoption. I chose to do adoption. And thank God, you know, God is so good, Stefania, because God has worked through this whole story. You know what I mean? Like everything that happened by divine timing. It was wonderful.
Well, I often say, you know, your mess is your success, because God puts you through that mess. He drives you through it to grow, to stretch you, to then be able to do what you're doing, where you're helping and teaching others and leading them to a safe place.
Yeah.
It's through that. I mean, I know I'm pacing a little bit further, but that's exactly what's happened now through this pain. So just quickly going back, so you're 17, you put this baby up for adoption. What happened then? Did you get your life back in order, or were you still like messed up? Like what?
Oh, I was, so even though like there was this part of me that knew this was the right thing to do, there was another part of me that felt like a failure as a woman and as a mother. I felt so much guilt and shame. And when I gave him up for adoption, you know, of course there was like this missing piece of me. And so I went even more of my addiction, and I started really drinking alcohol. I never was much for drinking, but I really really started drinking a lot. And my family swept in, my aunts swept in, and they helped me out. And I went back to Costa Rica for a little while, and I got to like really get in that beautiful scenery and really get away, you know. And I finally went back to Maryland, came back to home, and I lived with my grandparents for a little while, but it wasn't working out because I wanted to be free. Finally, for the first time in my life, I was 19 years old by this time, and I was free to do what I wanted. And all I wanted to do was party. So I moved out and I started couch surfing, but like, so I was sleeping on my friends' couches or in my car, but I also had like a hustle. So I would clean houses and get cash. So I wasn't like really tied down all the time to a 9-to-5 job or a job where I had to go and stay in that one place. Like I went to different places and cleaned houses. And then, so it was kind of I got paid good money, and I really used that to like just pay my way around partying and doing whatever. Half the time we never had any money. I don't even know how we did it. But, you know, that's how it is when you're 19 and young and you just don't care about anything. And so I got in a series of really bad relationships after this. So because I'm so codependent, I have such low self-esteem, I have such low self-worth, I don't trust anybody. You know, I'm sorry, I have my tuning fork. I don't trust anybody, you know. I don't trust anybody. Like my relationships all started out great, even with like women, men, didn't matter. work relationships, jobs, they all started out good because in the beginning I had like these good intentions and I had these high hopes. And then I had these unrealistic expectations on these people and I became the asshole. You know, I was like no fun to be around. I was a bitch. I was just jealous and insecure and violent. Like I got angry and rageful and violent. And I think if I had to say, like one of the things that really carried a lot of shame for me was that I got angry a lot, like my mother, that I yelled and I screamed and I didn't know how to not control myself, to have, a high emotional intelligence. I just didn't know what that was. What was that, So anyway,
So when
I had become
yes,
I had become my mother. I had become my mother is basically what I'm saying. Like I was jumping from relationship to relationship. I was doing drugs. I was doing this. I was doing that. I was, what you name it, I did it. Right. And about 5 years later, I got pregnant again, this time with my daughter. And I was dating the guy and found out that he was married with his 5th kid on the way. And so I stopped talking to him and 2 weeks later found out I was pregnant with her. So it wasn't the right time at all. No, it wasn't planned. So I was going to put her up for adoption as well. But my mother, who had begun to turn her life around, she was with her 5th husband by now. And they were doing good. They were in AA. They had stopped drinking. They were doing good. Like changes had been made and I could see it. And she was like, please don't put another one of my grandchildren up for adoption. So I said, okay. And I let her take care of my daughter, which was better than with my son because I didn't have much contact, if any at all. I had lost contact. Around 8 years, I lost contact until I found him, which I found him 3.5 years ago, by the way. And that's another happy ending story. It's like fairy tale happy endings. I live a life beyond my wildest dreams, Stefania, right now, because of the changes that I've made in my life. You know what I mean? Because of the work that I've done.
So let's talk about these changes now, because you've had a real colorful beginning. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Really colorful, and I'm sure you can really. You're ready to write your book. I can see it. This is a book.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface, but
exactly.
Yes.
But let's talk about what was the turning point that snapped inside you that, triggered you to say it's either this way or that way. Like, what was it? What made you change, and what beginning of that journey happened? What steps did you take?
Well, I can tell you that there were moments in time throughout all of this dysfunction and stuff, where I would have moments of clarity and I would be like, it can't be like this. This can't be what life is meant to be. There's got to be some other way. Other people are having good lives. Other people are happy and prosperous and able to function. I couldn't even keep a job, it was terrible. And I ended up in prison. I had, I got caught with 30 pounds of marijuana. And so they didn't like that in the state of Texas. So I got 5 years, and this is the short version of the story. And so in that, I got my parole answer. I got paroled because it was just a marijuana. I don't want to say it like I wasn't breaking the law. I was, but I'm saying compared to worse crimes, this was a small charge, possession of marijuana. It wasn't even a lot compared to what they consider a lot. It's a 3rd-degree felony, which is like right above a misdemeanor. So it wasn't a big deal and the prisons are overcrowded in Texas. And so they paroled me pretty much really quickly. And I got to see a world in there that changed me. That experience changed me. And when I made parole, my parole answer was to go to an in-prison therapeutic rehabilitation center, like a cognitive behavioral therapy behavioral modification program for 6 months. And this was the wildest experience I think I've ever seen, but it was effective. I got out of there. I did good for a little while. I messed up again, and they sent me right back there. So it was like the universe was like, okay, here you are. You have the same dorm, the same counselor, almost the same bed you were in the last time. When are you going to wake up? When are you going to wake up? And so I remember talking to my counselor about that, and I had this aha moment. Like I remember sitting in group and they started talking about boundaries, and I was like, what the hell is a boundary? Like, I really did not know. I didn't know what I had been doing to other people. I was completely in denial about it. And this is what I'm talking about when I say the power of denial. There was those moments of clarity where it was like, oh man, I was wrong for that. You know what I mean? Or in my dealings and relationships with people, because that's really where I suffered the most. Nobody wanted to be around me. And so my counselor gave me some work on codependency. She gave me that book, Codependent No More by Melody Beattie. Oh my God. There's a checklist or 3 in there that I was able to go through and check damn near every one. And I remember I cried because I woke up like at that moment and realized how I had been treating other people, how shitty I had been to my family, to my friends. And I remember then that is when I began to pour myself into learning how to change. And it was still a rocky road. Like, I didn't stay clean getting out that time either. No, the time that broke the straw that broke the camel's back was I was on parole. I was waiting to come home here, and I was doing meth again. I was getting high again, and I went to pass a bad check, and I got arrested. And that was God. That was God. It was God every time, man. It was God every time. And I'm telling you, because in that moment, I knew that I needed to own my part, that I needed to wake up and say, I created this mess. I'm responsible. Where I had never done that, I was in victim stance. I was in victim mode. I was blaming everybody else, I realized in that moment, and I said to myself, if I go back to prison, that's what needs to happen. I don't even care if I go back, because I will be okay, because from here on out, I am fucking done. I'm done with the drugs. I'm done with the lifestyle. I don't even care what happens after this. And so I had surrendered it. I had totally, and I got goosebumps all over me right now. Wow, I totally and completely let it go. I was done. And I knew it in my heart and deep down in my soul. And I knew none of my family was going to believe me. I had said it 1,000,000 times. But this time I was done. And so when I got out, let me tell you, I got out because my parole officer didn't violate you for misdemeanors. And that was just a misdemeanor. That was God. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, if that isn't God right there, I said, I am taking this chance. Right. There was this overwhelming feeling that this was my last chance, or I was going to either be dead or whatever. So that has been since January 20th, 2016 is my clean day. I have a little over 6 years now in recovery. I am in NA, and I help other people in recovery as well now.
And since then you started, then you started changing, then you started upskilling.
So let me tell you how that started, because I was on, like, it fascinated me how the mind worked. How did this happen? How could this happen to me? How could I be so blind to my behavior that I did not know what I was doing all those years like that? I wasn't aware. It was just like I was asleep, And so I became very fascinated with the mind and how it worked. And I started to do a little bit of personal development here and there. And, but it wasn't until one day, I think I had a little over a year clean, and I told my sponsor, I called her up and I was like, man, I don't think I'm ever going to be successful. I don't think that it's in the cards for me. I wasn't born on the right side of the tracks. I don't, like,
There's no
it
hope
just
for
is what
me.
it is.
That's it.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, this is it. It's okay. I'm just going to accept it, and it's going to be good. And so she was like, I think that you need to do some research and look up what the word success means, and then look up what successful people are doing to get that way. And I said, okay, because I was willing, when you get into the program, they say you should become willing, open-minded, and honest. So I really poured myself into that honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness, So I was like, all right, I'm willing, I'll do it. And I opened up, I fell down that rabbit hole so hard. And I began to live in the solution. I began to seek solutions for what was going on. And it wasn't an easy road at all. And I stumbled along the way. But along the way, I found hypnotherapy. And the first time I got hypnotized, I was having horrible flashbacks. I couldn't get past what I had done. And the flashbacks weren't even about what had happened to me, because lots of crazy shit had happened to me. No, the flashbacks were about what I had done to other people. I was so ashamed. I was riddled with guilt, and it was just eating me up. And I really just didn't want to live anymore if this is how I was going to have to live, clean or not. Like, it was tormenting me. It was, and so all along, all this time, I had been diagnosed bipolar, and anxiety disorder and ADHD, right? And I might even have a touch of ADHD, but for real, I was on medication for that. I was on mood stabilizers. I was on antidepressants, and so they weren't working. I was still having mood swings. I was still depressed. Like, what's happening here? So I got hypnotized, and I knew that a lot had to do with, that I wasn't eating very healthy. I was eating a lot of processed food, a lot of junk food, and we all know, garbage in, garbage out. You know what I'm saying? Like, the fuel that we eat is so important.
Absolutely.
But that's for another podcast. Yeah. So, but food definitely affects my mental state. And so I began to notice how I could regulate my mood with food. And by eating clean, I felt better. I felt clear. I was less foggy. So anyway, I go to this hypnotherapist in hopes to get help with the flashbacks and emotional eating, because I was eating my feelings. I transferred my addiction to drugs. Now that I've been off drugs for so long, I started eating and shopping, and my addiction is manifesting itself in other ways.
Right.
I'm also right. And I have this relationship now with, my husband. And in this relationship, I am projecting my unhappiness with my own unrealistic expectations of myself onto him. Right? This is the rigorous honesty it takes in a relationship to own the part you play, right? So here I am unhappy with myself for not eating right and not working out, but I'm always calling him out for not doing it, right?
And usually,
I made it all about
others, isn't it? Usually, what we're seeing in others is really a reflection back on us. That's what we. Yes, exactly.
Yes, absolutely, man. And so I had to, I worked with my sponsor a lot, but I had to realize that, I'm my husband's wife. I'm not his mother. I'm not his sponsor. I'm his wife, and I just need to love him and accept him for who he is. And when I got honest with myself, I realized that I was just unhappy with the fact that I wasn't living up to those standards either. And I wanted him to do it, so it would push me to do it, so that I would want to, because that's that codependency. I needed him to do it too, in order for me to do it. But I don't need that. I gave myself permission to do it without him. And so I started focusing every time I made it that, every time I pointed at him, and we still have these conversations, but I'm in the same moment going, okay, where am I upset with myself? Where am I failing? Or where am I falling short? That I need to look at me. And so it was just this process of like self-inquiry and everything. Sorry, I know I've been a little all over the place, but anyway, so I get hypnotized, right? And I'm so ready for this shit to work. I'm like, this is going to work. It's going to be great. And it was everything I hoped for. And I was like, I want to be real clear going into this session. So I stopped taking my psych meds like 3 days before. And so I got hypnotized and I came out feeling so good, Stefania, that I didn't feel like taking my medication. And so I didn't take it. And now let me tell you, this is what they tell bipolar people. Bipolar people like to stop taking their medication when they feel better, which is not a good idea. So I just want to say that out loud. Well, because you're going to find out why that worked for me. And that worked for me. So I've been medication free now for 2 years in July. It'll be 2 years in July. I've been off I went off the Prozac and the mood stabilizer with no side effects. It was crazy. It was so awesome. And so after a year, I get reevaluated with a psychiatrist. Okay. And she says, it's been a year since you've been on any medication. And so I'm going to revoke your diagnosis of bipolar and change it to PTSD because you clearly don't have bipolar. And that was a very happy day for me. But at the same time, I'd spent over 20 years, probably 26 years, mismedicated, misdiagnosed. I was a medication guinea pig for psych meds and stuff like that. And so all along, it was my trauma. All along, it was my conditioning. All along, it was the learned behavior that was modeled for me. I didn't know anything different. I didn't need a pill, And that's not to say that I don't want anybody to think that I'm not advocating for medication, because if you need it, you need it. That's fine. But I didn't need it, but I was told that I needed it. And I was exhibiting symptoms that mimicked bipolar, that mimicked anxiety, all the way down to having anxiety attacks, and ended up in the hospital, in the ER, thinking I'm dying of a heart attack. It's all along, it's PTSD. And so I was inspired so much by that. I lost 20 pounds. Like, I was doing really, really good. And so it sparked my interest. I said, if this helps me like this, and my husband had quit smoking, also from the same person. And so I was like, well, if it works like this, I've got to help others. And along the way, but before I even found hypnotherapy, I'm sorry, I became a Reiki master 4 years ago. My sponsor was a Reiki master teacher, and my mom had gotten diagnosed with cancer, and I wanted to help ease her pain during her transition. So I learned Reiki, and that was my beginning into energy medicine and energy healing and all of that. I'm fascinated by quantum physics. I study that stuff in my spare time. Like, I read, books on the electric body. I don't know what happened to my camera just now, but
This is perfect. That's okay.
But anyway, my life now is dedicated to helping other people find their way out of the darkness, to wake up to how they can be like, I am living the life beyond my wildest dreams. It is perfect. It is exactly how, it's even better than what I imagined. And I can't thank God enough, Stefania. It's wonderful.
I know. And I've known you now for like 2 years. We met. Yeah. And
yeah,
of course we have, we've journeyed along our own journeys together and helping each other, which has been wonderful. So talking about hypnosis, because we're both hypnotists, and we use hypnotherapy as a modality with our clients. So just share how it helped you to even come further along with your healing, because healing is just continuous. It's like peeling back an onion, isn't it? We're just continually just peeling back. It's not like one shot fixes it all, because we're still living, we're still experiencing, we're still going through situations. But we certainly know that we heal the past, that we know how, and we're better equipped to how to actually deal with things in the future, right? Or in the present.
Right. Yes, exactly.
So what's happened to your camera there? I can see that you're just totally frozen. Is there any way?
Yeah, I don't know. See,
Do you want to toggle?
I was afraid.
Toggle back in.
What?
Hang on, let me see. Let me just see if that works. If I just bring you back in and see if that helps.
That is so weird. Like the first time I was ever on one of your other podcasts as a guest, it did this. I just couldn't. And that's why I was surprised it worked for as long as it did.
Oh, we can.
But that's okay, because we're going on an hour anyway. But I do want to answer your question.
Yes.
And sorry for those of you who can't see me, but
okay.
Hypnotherapy has completely changed my life. It has helped me to heal on, I think, the deepest level of healing that could, like on a soul level. And I want to say, first of all, really thank you, Stefania, because you have hypnotized me so many times. And even earlier tonight, when I was having a hard time struggling with, some challenges that I was having earlier. And I don't know, like, I just really love it. And it's relaxing, it's effective, it helps things move along faster. I think that, we don't give enough credit to the power of our own mind. And yes, those things take time. Yes, it took a lifetime for me to learn these habits and this conditioning. It took a lifetime of me practicing the same thing over and over and over again before I figured it out and before I got it. It takes time. And so neurons that wire together fire together. So when you have a habit, the subconscious mind puts it on autopilot so that it runs automatically beyond your awareness. And so it's the bringing of the awareness to the habit is how you overcome it. Piece by piece by piece, you break that habit apart. You break that neural network apart and its supports. And simultaneously while you're creating the new positive habit, the new change that you want. And so it's a systematic approach in the mind. And it's just knowing how to bypass those critical factors and get to that place where you can make those changes.
Because, the mind doesn't like change, does it? Well, let's
No.
It doesn't like change, and that's why we can easily fall into homeostasis, which is a state of just doing the same thing over and over.
Right.
And Einstein says, insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result, but we still keep doing it.
Right, because it's a habit in the subconscious mind. Now, see, the great thing, so the subconscious mind runs 88% of the show, as you know, and the conscious mind only 12%. So the conscious mind is where our ability to reason and have logic and willpower and make decisions, that's where that lies, in the frontal lobe. And so whenever we go into fight or flight, that part shuts down. You're all acting from subconscious. And we form all of our core beliefs from age 0 to 7. And in that time, and at age 8, the critical mind forms and kind of seals off that subconscious level. And so the cognitive mind forms in the frontal lobe. I mean, it's been forming, but it really, really picks up at this point.
Yes. Solidifies.
And it solidifies, exactly. And so basically, the 88% that's running the show is your inner 7-year-old. We're all being run by our inner child, you know?
Yeah.
And so really it's all about healing that inner child, healing and just upgrading those programs that are running those
Exactly. I like that. It is. It's
yeah.
upgrading those programs because, like, you know, take for example on a computer, we upgrade our programs all the time. We download, we update our, you know,
Yes.
Apple, for example, there's always uploads, and
Yeah.
that's what we
I
need
mean,
as
some of
well.
us need to go from Windows 95 to freaking, you know,
Up to date.
to the current, to up to date current version, you know?
Exactly.
So,
So, you know, which explains very easily how, you know, we carry from particularly relationships, because, you know, everything, this is why we titled this topic relationship, mental illness and addictions, because it is a relationship. Anything that you're relating to is creating a relationship. So we're
yes.
bringing these into every relationship, every stage of our life. We're carrying it on and on and on until it actually is healed, until it actually is released, until it actually is reprogrammed. Correct?
Yeah, or you just die, because you know, denial is a strong motivator, man, and the subconscious mind is trying to protect you. So if you are out there and you have had this thought or this inkling that, man, things could be different, there's, you know, maybe everybody can't be wrong. Like, I had to tell myself that, you know, everybody can't be wrong, Nikki. There's got to be something you're doing to not be able to have a relationship with anybody, to not be able to have a lasting relationship, or one that doesn't end in resentments and bitterness and anger and stuff like that.
Right.
You know, I didn't want any more dysfunction. I was attracting like the most dysfunctional men. I was attracting, you know, and I was a mess myself. So
Exactly.
yeah, nothing can be done
Exactly.
until you get that straight.
Yeah, and this, of course, you know, relates, you know, for both genders, both men and female.
Yeah.
You know, there's no difference. We're still, you know, programming and still acting our behaviors from our early childhood, particularly if it's not healed and released. So yeah, this has been a great conversation, Nikki, and you know, I'm really
Thank you.
grateful, and I thank you for actually coming on and, you know, being really vulnerable and sharing your story, because, you know, you have such a, you know, we say a colorful story that, you know, a lot of people don't want to share, but, you know, through sharing, I know that there's a lot of people, a lot of us out there that can relate to your story, if not all of it, but in bits and pieces, you know, particularly if we are just jumping from relationship to relationship and not necessarily have a drug addiction. Addictions aren't necessarily just a addiction in drugs, right? Or pharmaceutical drugs.
Oh
Or,
yeah.
you know,
I always like to say, I'm sorry. I always like to say that I was an equal opportunity addict.
equally opportunity addict. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we just got Billy here, who's just thanks Stefania and Nikki. Thank you, Billy, for joining in. If you've been listening, please feel free to share. Yeah, so, you know, through this, we can have addictions to other things. You know, we can have addiction to sex, we can have addiction
Yes.
to porn, we can have addiction to food, to cigarettes. I mean, the addiction list just goes on and on and on. You know, so it's definitely, and Billy, just to quote Billy, I definitely related to Nikki's story in my own way. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, I know that there's a lot of us out there that can relate. And if this is relating, if this is really touching something within, just know that you can heal from this. You can
Yes, absolutely.
let it go. You can transform your life. There's nothing you can't do. Nothing, absolutely. And nothing without God, you know, like I know not everybody is religious, or God is not there. It may be your creator, the universe, the energy force, whatever you want to call it. There's something greater than us that lives in us as well. And we have the power to do whatever it is that we want to do, and to change, to transform, to live that better life, and to absolutely, heal. And yeah, it's been great, Nikki. I really appreciate you. Really, really appreciate you.
Stefania, I really appreciate you too, and the opportunity to be here with you today. I love you so much.
I love you too, Nikki. You're in my heart. You know that. The crazy thing with Nikki is, we haven't met in person. Okay. But I said,
Yeah.
as soon as we can travel, I'm definitely coming to the States, or you're coming to Australia, and, just give each other the biggest hug, because I just, even though we're not presently together, but I know in spirit, we are so connected, which is wonderful. So, Nikki, I just want to ask you, what message would you like to leave our audience with? Anyone out there, because, anyone that this resonates with, what message from your heart would you like to just leave with our audience?
Man, I would like to say that change is definitely possible. Freedom from the prison that we create in our mind is definitely a possibility. Healing from our trauma is definitely a possibility. Being able to live a life where we are happy and content and fulfilled is absolutely attainable. It is possible. And all you have to do is set your intention to live in the solution, to find a way to solve whatever it is that is causing you emotional pain, physical pain, spiritual pain, whatever it is. Start seeking that solution, because it's out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Nikki. And, we're waiting for this book, your book.
Oh my gosh, yes, I know. It's coming.
So get cracking, because I know it's going to be just amazing, amazing. So thank you once again. And thank you to everyone who has tuned in to Let's Talk Relationship. As you know, we've always got a different topic every week. And if you want to be a guest on my show, please let me know, because this show is about just having a conversation where we can share our story, and, connect with like-minded people, and in ways inspire others that there is a better way. So don't be shy. Connect with me and let me know. So thanks once again. Thanks, Nikki. And we'll see you next week on Let's Talk Relationship. Until then, I send you love and I send you passion. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.